Catus Maximus here. Just a short video about this Icon Harbor Freight's professional razor blade scraper. I don't know really what to say about this. It was 15 bucks. I haven't been in Harbor Freight in a long time. Haven't done a Harbor Freight video in a while. Decided to pick this up and really notice it's just a little oddball. Even for Harbor Freight in the Icon branding, this is more like a Pittsburgh Pro rebranded as an Icon. It's the easiest way to say it, and there's a couple pieces of evidence of that. One is it just has a standard part number. If people who've been buying Icon tools or looking at them know that all the sockets, wrenches, all that stuff have like a separate Icon part number, and then they have the standard 5-digit Harbor Freight inventory number. This one doesn't have a special Icon number, although it is a Taiwanese tool. They include a few extra blades. There's some, actually, they may be Taiwanese blades, but who knows? They could be, since the bulk of it's made in Taiwan, they could be Chinese blades with the Taiwanese tool. I guess the good thing to say about this is, one, they did properly. It's a trilobular handle, rubberized overmolding, really thick. The Icon is actually double molded plastic that is not silkscreen, so that will never wear off. They did properly line it so the blade is flat with the flats of the handle. But realistically, for 15 bucks on Amazon or eBay, there's a world, or actually all over the internet, of these types of scrapers. I wish they would have made it straight instead of angled, because many times you're using these scrapers, for automotive uses, scraping aluminum surfaces, etc. You don't have a lot of space. And the problem with the razor blades is that they're so sharp when they're new that even Formica and aluminum, they really want to bite in. So you really got to have a very steep angle, so you're not pressing down too much so they don't dig in. So I wish it would have been made straight, or that they would have had an option. But this style is a little more helpful because a lot of people are putting a lot of force on them and just going like this. And I still think that's just a little bit steep. I've never been fond of these. I had a cheaper one a long time ago, and I ended up bending this whole thing to the point where it was useless just because it kept on jamming up on me. Besides that, I would say that the plates down here could be thicker. The bottom plate is thicker than the top clamping plate. A couple of heavy-duty spot welds. I mean, the shaft and everything's more than rigid enough. That all seems pretty decent. But this bottom plate could have been made even thicker than it is, just to really make sure that the weak spot is going to be the razor blade itself. And that's kind of the idea with this tool, is if you're using a tool with interchangeable razor blades. I'm going to use this snap-on as a screwdriver here. Is that you want the razor blade to be the absolute weakest thing. So it's what's breaking and bending well before the tool itself does. And it seems like this one is like right on the edge of meeting that, essentially, that design constraint. I do like that you can flip the razor blade around so you're not stuck with it always being exposed, because obviously you do need to be careful with these scrapers because they are pretty sharp. Thumb screw is mighty small. If you're going to have a thumb screw on this, make it a real specialized one with just a huge old knob on it so you can actually get a halfway decent grip and not always have to search around for a coin or something to loosen it. Although I'm sure a lot of people, when you're replacing the blade or need to adjust it, you're just going to use the back of another blade to loosen it. But nonetheless, it would have been a nice design choice to have a much larger thumb wheel in there. And really, the best thing is to get this style scraper. And if this style scraper just isn't working out for you, then you may want to pick up one of these. I always every time I talk about scrapers, I always bring out my favorite snap-on CSA 14C, just because I really like it, and this thing works just about as well as a razor blade. Really like this straight scraper, and so that's the kind of what I was talking about, is this razor blade really should be straight, because then it can be more useful in a greater variety of situations. These really steep angles are really better for school teachers to scrape bubblegum off of desks or crayon and whatnot off of classroom windows, in my opinion, than the scraping, just because you're just promoted to drive it down vertically too much, and that's going to be a more natural angle, is to hold a tool like this rather than having to make sure to hold a tool flat like this. But besides that, I think it's certainly useful to have one with a bend, so obviously I'll be keeping it. And I think really the best thing to say about this is this Icon handle. I don't know if this is what Icon's using on those, Harbor Freight's using on those Icon nut drivers and screwdrivers, but this is actually not a bad handle. And I'll have to say the big reason is that isn't a rigid plastic with a thin layer of overmold. It's a really thick, almost 3/16 right at its thickest point, really just deep, cushy layer. And I certainly hope it holds up and that they actually made it out of a material that's oil and gas resistant, because this is going to be primarily used in automotive situations. But it's actually, I'll have to say, this is actually pretty good. If there's a variety of screwdrivers, etc., that I would buy, if they had this, where it has really thick, deep ridges. So as a screwdriver, this would just be fantastic. It's trilobular. You would just get an awesome amount of purchase, even with greasy hands, because you have a thick shelf to work against. And then it's really cushy, so you're not getting any kind of, pinching or anything like that. I really like that a lot. And then they even added the stippling here right at the very front. That's really the best part about this tool. Heck, I may even grind the tip off and turn it into a flathead screwdriver just for that reason alone. And actually, they could have even innovated and made some little joint right here with the thumb screw, so you could just customize the angle of the blade, and that would have been perfect. So that's kind of my review of this tool. I think for $15, it's about worth what they're charging for it. But I think it could have been straight, and I think they could have used just a bit thicker material down here on the front. Just because it seems okay, but it does flex. It does flex quite a bit, and it's one of those things where if you really put a lot of force on it, you could easily end up bending that, even with the razor blade in there. I think it's just tuned, so the razor blade will bend, but it's not overbuilt. And if Icon's going to call it a professional scraper, this bottom plate should be really extra thick, to where even if you accidentally step on it, it's not going to bend too much. So I guess that's the end of my review of this Icon scraper. Kind of a mixed emotions tool. Can't really recommend it, but can't really recommend against it, especially just for somebody to experience what is actually a pretty darn nice handle. Even compared to traditional handles like on this Snap-on, which I do like, this is better. The cushy padding is just really sets it apart. Anyway, really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.